In my original essay, I talked about Rome's military strategy and how Rome's decision to reform its military to a more mobile force with an increasing number of cavalry led to the decline and ultimate sacking of Rome. Rome's traditional military consisted of many heavy infantry soldiers who were armed with massive heavy shields, which today riot shields are based off of. They traveled in large groups of legions, had little to no archers or cavalry, and were incredibly disciplined. Rome relied on brute force, communication, and skill to defeat their opposition, and were usually incredibly successful in doing so. Although Rome was a dominating force, enemies that consisted of a powerful cavalry made Rome much more vulnerable. There are multiple instances of Rome's traditional military failing miserably, and in some instances losing close to 100,000 men during one battle. These battles may have led Rome to believe that its long-standing traditional military was weak against these types of enemies. In this iMovie, I will show you 3 battles: Arezzo, Cannae, and Trebia, all which led to massive Roman casualties. The Battle of Trebia was fought between Hannibal, a famous Carthaginian general, and Tiberius Longus, a lesser-known Roman general. Hannibal was famous for trekking all the way from Africa, around Spain, and over the Alps, instead of sailing across the Mediterranean Sea. No army had ever crossed the Alps in history, and Hannibal did it with roughly 60 elephants. In 218 BC, Hannibal, accompanied by roughly 20,000 infantry, 10,000 cavalry, and 15 elephants, met Longus, accompanied by 36,000 infantry and 4,000 cavalry, at the Battle of Trebia. Rome's custom was to have large numbers of heavy infantry and little cavalry. Vastly outnumbered by size and weaponry, Hannibal used his cavalry to lure the Roman infantry over the river separating the camps and sent a hidden detachment of roughly 4,000 cavalry and 10 elephants to the right of the camp. Rome, knowing that they had superior numbers, sent half of their infantry and cavalry over the river. Once they engaged the Carthaginian forces, the hidden cavalry and elephants flanked the Romans from behind and quickly defeated that section of the army. After a resounding defeat, Hannibal sent most of his cavalry and light armored troops across the river to defeat the Romans. After a short skirmish, Rome retreated in defeat. It is estimated that Hannibal lost 6,000 to 8,000 soldiers, whereas Rome lost roughly 20,000. The Battle of Cannae took place in 216 BC and had the Romans pitted against Hannibal again. However, this time Hannibal had already advanced well into Italy and claimed many victories. Roman commanders Paulus and Varro led an army of 50,000 heavy armored soldiers and 5,000 cavalry into Cannae to defeat Hannibal's much smaller force of about 28,000 soldiers and 12,000 cavalry. Rome had set up their traditional formation with shield-bearing soldiers in front and cavalry on the sides to prevent flanking. Hannibal set his heavy soldiers in front, his cavalry across from Rome's, and reserve troops behind the cavalry. Hannibal, however, aligned himself on the front line. The battle began with Rome using their heavy troops to drive into the heart of Hannibal's army. This tactic was very effective as Rome advanced further and further into Carthage's ranks. However, on the sides, Hannibal's horsemen drove Rome's back. Once Rome had driven far enough into Hannibal's lines, he sent detachments of reserves around the sides to flank the Romans, and the leftover horsemen created a circle around Rome's army. From there, Carthage slaughtered the Romans. Estimated casualties for the Romans were the entire cavalry and about 45,000 soldiers, whereas Hannibal only lost roughly 10,000 soldiers and 3,000 cavalry. Again, Rome's traditional style, heavy army had been brutally defeated. The final battle of this project is the Battle of Arezzo, and it is an example of one of the worst defeats in Roman history. The battle took place in 105 BC, a period in which Rome's military strategy was still traditional and heavy armored. The Romans fought against the Cimbri and other small Germanic tribes who had taken up residence in southern Gaul, a territory Rome was currently trying to acquire. Malleus Maximus and Caepio, the Roman generals, were given the task to push the Cimbri out of southern Gaul for good, and to do this were each given roughly 40,000 to 45,000 troops and 5,000 cavalry. The two generals were each given separate areas to conquer, and even though Maximus outranked Caepio, Caepio did not like Maximus and saw himself as a superior commander. Once Maximus built his camp, he sent a large number of scouts to survey the land and to find the Cimbri's camp. These scouts were met by a force of about 20,000 Cimbri soldiers who wanted to negotiate with the Romans. Caepio saw this negotiation taking place and marched on the Cimbres, thinking he could defeat them and become the hero of the battle. Caepio had fallen into a trap. 80 to 100,000 Cimbri barbarian soldiers and 30,000 cavalry, the largest army a Roman had faced at the time, emerged from the woods, resulting in one of the most one-sided battles in world history. The Cimbri throttled Caepio's army, killing almost all of his soldiers and only taking about 5,000 casualties themselves. Now the entire Cimbri force, estimated to be 120,000 light armored soldiers and 30,000 cavalry, marched on Maximus's camp, easily defeating him as well. Total casualties for the Cimbri were about 15,000, whereas Rome lost around 70 to 80,000. Throughout these three battles, Rome's traditional military, which was known for being one of the most dominant forces in world history, was swiftly defeated at the hands of less trained and less equipped forces. One reason they were dominated during these three battles could be the cavalry. In each of the three battles, the opposition's cavalry outnumbered Rome's, even though in 2 out of the 3 battles, Rome overall outnumbered the enemy. Overall, Cannae, Trebia, and Arusio definitely affected the way Rome viewed its military strength, and may be the reason Rome switched to a more light, armored, and mobile military during its later wars. More importantly, these battles showed the known world that Rome could be defeated, and eventually they were.